Hi, Internet. Today we put on the WaterWings for the first time to examine something fun happening in the atheist community right now. Within this, we have an interesting character of Richard Carrier. You may remember Richard Carrier as one of the prominent leaders in the atheist plus community. Although one of the first people to get excluded from the atheist plus community, but then also somewhat recommunicated. For those of you unaware of what atheism plus we'll use was, since it has fairly well been crushed, their mission statement was, we are atheists, plus we care about social justice. Atheists, plus we support women's rights. Atheists, plus we protest racism. Atheist, plus we fight homophobia and transphobia. Atheists, plus we use critical thinking and skepticism. Okay, as far as that, you say you're atheist plus all these things, so you should be separate from regular atheists, right? No, they said that all atheists must fall under these or they are not true atheists. So you can see where the problems arose. Richard Carrier, specifically, has written what I'm going to call the Skepticon Reynolds Pamphlet.
The Reynolds Pamphlet. Have you read this? Alexander Hamilton had a torrent affair, and he wrote it down right there. Highlight!
For those of you unfamiliar, the Reynolds Pamphlet is where Alexander Hamilton wrote in gritty detail everything that had happened between him and a woman he took on while he was married. Richard Carrier has done a similar thing in a series of blog posts, and you can find these all on richardcarrier.info. His most recent one, The Details of My Defamation Case, goes into wonderful detail on an accusation that Skepticon Inc., something that is somewhat close to my heart in so much as I have wanted to go to Skepticon, but Skepticon seems to be a hive of social justice and non-rationalism, to the point of having Black Lives Matter activists having people publicly denounce themselves over statements they've made in regards to movements. It's kind of intriguing. May go into further detail on that later. But Skepticon decided to announce that he was dangerous, and there have been multiple claims against him, and he was banned. Great. This is more of a movement, because he's spoken at Skepticon on occasion, and has been going there for many repeated years, and now he has been banned, in his words, for inappropriate behavior with a Skepticon staffer. Now, this is actually a Skepticon staffer and an event that didn't even happen at Skepticon, just with someone who staffs at Skepticon. He also says that they did not ask for him, did not interview him, just no evidence from him. And there's a reason for this, Richard. The reason why they wouldn't ask for your opinion, ask to interview you, get any information from you, is something that social justice and feminism, third wave feminism to be clear, and atheism plus advocate for, which is listen and believe. You are at the end of a listen and believe gun for what appears to be the third or fourth time. And at the end of that gun, the only thing you can do is get shot by it. There is no other option. the hardcore among your community, whether it be social justice, atheism plus, third wave feminism, whichever one you want to represent in this, there are going to be people which never believe your claims. Even if you had video evidence of the supposed event, you would still be in the wrong. If you had an audio recording or an audio and video recording of them saying, yes, please stick it in me, it wouldn't matter. If they say you did something wrong, you did something wrong, according to your own beliefs. But here's the more interesting thing. He goes into detail with the fact that he wasn't contacted. He also says he's repeatedly requested that they have all claims that are relying on competently investigated before continuing to publish any such policy or statement. Now, this is interesting, seeing as he's in the middle of an ongoing defamation case against someone who has already accused him, which is what seems to precipitate the Skepticon announcement, although they claim to know of other things he has done at other events. And the best part of this is he then goes into detail on who this staffer is, saying that the Skepticon staffer is Lauren Lane, an ex-lover of mine, who has indicated a strong dislike of me for breaking up with her, and who harassed me in the past. So now, we've got the really fun thing of a male feminist saying that an ex-lover harassed him and has a grudge because he broke up with her. But he doesn't just stop there. He is very much a detail-oriented individual. We're going to go into this because this is fun. Witnesses and documents will attest that many years ago, Lauren Lane initiated a sexual relationship with me at a Skepticon event she was running, at which I was a speaker, and that she did so without asking my consent, but just presuming my consent in front of witnesses who can attest to this fact. We had flirted for years, such that I am certain Lane had a sound belief in my interest, but I have to point out, I would never act that way myself without politely asking verbally first if it was something desired. I would be rightly disparaged for doing what she did. So to break this down, apparently they either boned or started to escalate a sexual encounter in front of witnesses, which, you do you, whatever kink you're into. If you like banging in front of people, that's your thing. I didn't know that was something that generally happened at skeptic conferences, but whatever. The fun part is he then decides to virtue signal the fact that, I would never do anything with anyone without getting constant consent. It's this whole idea of there has to be the verbal consent at all times. Through if you go and actually pull up some videos of what affirmative consent means, they'll say at every step. So it doesn't matter if you're already naked on top of each other, at every step you have to get that consent. So he wants to show that I would never do such a thing, and she just assumed my consent the entire time. Okay, buddy. Then, if you thought that was already interesting enough, he goes on. We continued our sexual affair for many days, over several months. At this time, I was cheating on my wife with her, with Lane's full knowledge. This is where we get into straight up Reynolds Pamphlet. He started to feel conflicted about cheating on his wife, said they couldn't continue. She did not accept. She harassed him repeatedly with attempts to persuade him to continue the relationship. This goes on and on. He blocked her, because that's the thing. If someone doesn't agree with you, block them. Now, I will say, block people if they're continually bothering you. Or heck, if they bother you at all. This is the internet. You have upwards of, there's 7 billion people on the planet, but you have upwards of 4 billion people who actively are online that you can interact with. You don't like somebody, block them. But he blocks her, and he says her behavior was consistently boundary pushing and harassing. I never engaged in any such behavior towards her. Again, he's in a situation where he has to virtue signal constantly because he is the accused. With that in mind, I'm going to read this next paragraph pretty much verbatim because it shows the weird, regressive, almost circular logic one has to come up with to live the sort of lifestyle he wants to live, where he gets to bang college kids all the time while still being in not only a marriage and a relationship, but also being a good member of the atheist plus community. Months later, I had confessed my cheating to my wife, and my wife and I began an open marriage arrangement. I then sent an electronic message to Lane, renewing the sexual banter we had engaged in while together, based on her last communications with me, in which she had asked me to remove the barriers to our having a relationship and start again. But because I had been forced, mind you, to cut off communications due to her harassment of me, I was unaware of things that had happened to her and her feelings in that intervening time. In that context, what I wrote to her was really awful, and not something I've ever done again with anyone. I apologized to her for that. She wanted to talk it over further in person next Skepticon, and we did, and I remained thoroughly apologetic. There are witnesses who can attest all this as well. So again, I don't know how this man lives, but he always has witnesses with him. You just have to carry around witnesses. They're so important. Now, with this, he took her no for an answer. And I'd like to showcase that in this, we have a man hooked up with a girl who works at Skepticon. Fine, whatever. Works, volunteers, whatever. And did this while cheating on his wife. And did this over the course of many months, he said. He confesses the cheating to his wife. Then bargains for an open marriage. Which, fine. Polyamory, do your thing, whatever. Then, immediately, the woman who, in his words, had been harassing him, that he had blocked, he's like, remember that girl who's all up on my dick? I better message her and be like, yo, baby, let's get this on. And again, if what she had done to him was, in any sense of the word, harassment, you wouldn't go back to that person. You don't automatically go back to the harasser. Now, in a situation where maybe you're in an abusive relationship and maybe that kind of thing, then yeah, there's the idea of going back to the harasser. But this was one you had blocked. You never had to communicate again with that person, ever. And, that girl was all up on my dick. Now that my dick is free to do whatever I want without feeling bad about cheating on my wife, I should go try to bone her again, right? Also, with as open as this has been, I'd really love to see what the awful message that he sent her was. Was it like a dick pic? Did he just send an unsolicited dick pic to her? What happened? Come on, Richard, you're being this open. Just publish what you wrote. That would be great. I want to see the harassing messages from her. If we're gonna go ahead and do this in full, show me the harassing messages from her, and go ahead and show whatever the awful thing. I hope it was just some really long, detailed fanfiction.net type bullshit. He then says that, inspired by the false accusations that he's currently suing someone over, he thinks that is what led Lane, this ex who he cheated on his wife with, then tried to get back with, and then she wasn't having it, so whatever. He thinks that led her to use her status as a Skepticon board member or member of Skepticon Inc. to defame him and ban him from their events. And you know what? That's totally within her power to do. If you wanted to pull up a list of everyone who can't go to Skepticon, it's longer than you would care to think. It's not quite as long as Steve Shive's block list on Twitter, but it's close. And there's probably a heavy overlap. Now this is where we get a little more interesting. Had a man done all that Lane has done, people would be outraged and calling for him to step down. So right now, Richard Carrier is calling for an all-in-all Gamergate style situation. Is this his Zoe post? He just says, oh, well, I guess since if the roles were reversed, maybe you shouldn't be a part of a movement that has such a double standard that it matters at all whether Lane is a man or a woman. Maybe you should think about the fact that your ideology states that since she is the woman, she's right, and as the man, you're wrong, that maybe your ideology's wrong. Maybe take a step back out of your weird atheist plus polyamory echo chamber and say, hey, maybe men and women can both be wrong. Maybe I was an asshole and she's an asshole and now I'm being punished for it. He then goes into saying that had that man harassed her after she broke up with her and not taking no for an answer and pushing past every stated boundary, there would be outrage. Yes, she probably was like, Richard, maybe your dick is just that good. I don't know. I haven't seen it. I have no evidence of what your dick is like. Maybe if you want to post your dick pic so we can all judge your dick, that whatever. But it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Both of you guys from this post seem like assholes. She's using her, to use one of your terms, her position of power at Skepticon to fuck you over because you fucked her over while fucking your wife over. He also states she initiated an overtly sexual act without verbally asking permission. Again, this goes to the idea that two humans can't both non-verbally decide that they want to bone. And apparently, I still want to state, I want to know what the sex act was, because she did it while there were witnesses. So I want to know, what's the situation? Were you guys at rope night? Like, what the fuck happened that she did an overtly sexual act on you while there were witnesses present without verbally asking permission? Also, basic open question to anyone. Can deaf people ever consent? Like, what if two deaf people want to bone the fuck out of each other? How does that work? And they have no hands. Go, deaf people, no hands, can't sign it to each other. What do? That's just, this whole idea of constant verbal consent. Ugh. Okay. Now, also, Skepticon must be great, right? Like, people just do overt sexual acts without asking permission to each other all the time. Skepticon sounds great. Put that on the banner heading. Like, put that in the emails. Sexual acts happen without permission. You will get such a spike in traffic, which Skepticon desperately needs. He then goes on in the rest of this to talk about Stephanie Zvan and P.Z. Myers. Now, a lot of you in the atheist circles know of P.Z. Myers. These are both people, again, heavy in the Atheist Plus community, and they say they've spoken to two other women who have made claims. He's saying that there's only two women that could possibly make a claim against him. Hey Richard, welcome to feminism. Anyone can make a claim against you and it's automatically true. This is what your ideology has wrought. So, Lauren Lane, the one he's previously talked about, and this person, Heine Dadaboy. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm assuming it's a sweet gender neutral, because it says gender neutral pronouns. I'm going to say, you should say it like, we're in Jamaica, man. Heine Dadaboy. So he sent an email to Heine Dadaboy saying, hey, I want to fuck your gender neutral, probably ass. I don't know what he's into. And he's saying that Dadaboy, Dadaboy, I can't say it without doing an awful Jamaican accent, has been slandering him because of an email that he sent. Richard, please publish one of these emails where you're just like talking about how much you want their ass. That would be great. that it was an email conversation between friends. He emailed them saying that he wants to do them, and they did not appreciate it. Which, I mean, I guess getting an email out of the blue from a friend talking about how much they want to bone you, I mean, generally it's a compliment and you would just say no. But as far as that, it's because they were on the same blog network. And this again shows. So you've got Databoy, Zvan, and Myers all on this free thought blog network, which is basically atheism plus the community. They are all incestuous to the point of they're only going to bone each other, and they're only going to talk about their pronouns, their social justice, the systemic racism, all of these things that, again, have nothing to do with what brought them together, have nothing to do with their atheism. They're so wrapped up in everything else, they've lost sight of why they came together in the first place. The best part, the part that you're going to see clipped out of this, and PZ Myers is going to write about it, and everyone in that community is going to talk about it, is his subsection, A Fundamentally Broken Epistemology. It is very disheartening to see feminists in our movement act exactly as MRAs and other anti-feminists claim they would, by believing any claim told them without investigating it, and exaggerating ordinary and relatively harmless behavior into dangerous sexual harassment. Now, this is coming from a guy who's been multiple times now accused, to the point, I want to say, to the point where he has a published guideline for sexual encounters. When you're at the point where you have to publicly publish a guideline for your sexual behaviors, you're either a mega creep trying to bone everybody, or you're in a community that is so sex negative and so regressive to the point where you cannot literally talk to anyone or flirt with anyone without it automatically being harassment. Fix your movement. Leave your movement. Come to the other side. It's great over here. If you have to have a conversation about the epistemology of your atheism movement, maybe your movement is less about atheism and more about feminism and social justice.